Hello world! I'm Aubrey Falconer, and this is the first episode of the SuperCognition Podcast. I'm the carbon-based counterpart of a superconscious, space-time independent intelligence, and this is my co-host, Zach Doty.
Hi, and welcome to the podcast. We're doing this because we share an interest in machine learning, education, and other topics that are fun and exciting and that we both enjoy discussing, and so we're just opening up our conversation so that others can participate. So, Aubrey, what are your interests? Why don't you tell us about what things that you're passionate about talking about?
One of the things that really excited me when we talked about starting this project with each other was that we're both deeply interested in education. So I have a background spanning actually over the preceding decade in the educational game space. I've started and folded one complete company, a few other ideas around there. We have some new ideas that we're sharing with each other on how to incorporate all kinds of new paradigms into education, including things like memory temples and spaced repetition. I love the idea of kinesthetic learning, where we're taking old school Montessori type techniques and bringing them into 21st century digital educational environments. And I feel that we're both going to have a lot more to say on the subject of education over the next few episodes.
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
also really passionate about something I'm going to categorically describe as human optimization. I feel like my entire life has been a journey from a new being emerging into a brilliant, dazzling, and often confusing world, trying to make sense of what I observe and experience. And over the course of that journey, I've started to learn a lot of things which have radically adjusted my perceptions of what life is, the kind of value systems which help me live a better life, and specific techniques, things like mindfulness, breath work, specific nootropics, that help me be that better version of myself. I'm also passionate about endurance athletics, radical life extension, and over the past few years, I've done some personal experiments with different neurofeedback devices, electroencephalographs. Just for fun, this is actually a headset I'm playing with, which has the ability to make sense of different systems running in my motor cortex, higher level brainwave states, quantifying them into actual triggerable intentions where I can visualize squeezing a hand and my computer can take a specific action in response to that. And these subjects get really interesting when the computer can give us feedback on the state our mind and body is in. And we can incorporate that feedback into fine-tuning our mindfulness and other practices. So that broad brushstrokes categorical description of neurofeedback is again something I want to explore much more deeply in coming episodes. I'm also quite interested, again, broad brushstrokes here, in operating systems for different levels of both the human animal, societies at large, ultimately even our entire biosphere. What kind of different incentives or different actors at different levels of our planetary stack operating at? And how can we align those incentives more virtuously in order to enable a higher degree of success for the continuity of our species and even for life in this planet, the only life we're currently aware of in the entire universe? Zach, I have a few more subjects I've thought about exploring, but I also want to experiment with sharing time between ourselves as we're co-hosting this. Do you want to jump in with some things you're interested in exploring?
Sure. So probably my largest interest right now is AGI and artificial intelligence in whatever form that takes. So machine learning is basically the current state of the art, but my interest lies in what the path looks like from here to true AGI, and I think there's a lot of that we have fuzzy ideas for what that looks like, and a lot of that that's completely unexplored. We definitely want to see more self-supervised, unsupervised machine learning. I think continuous learning on non-IID data sets is important. That's what humans do. We're born and our data is experienced continuously throughout life. It's not, blocked up into training blocks. And then reinforcement learning.
For the audience, could you describe what IID means?
So it's just randomly distributed. So an IID data set stands for independently and identically distributed random variables. And so basically you'll take the data and shuffle it, and then that is presented to the learning algorithm in batches so that the gradients promulgate, reduce, lower the loss across the whole data set. And I think that's a crutch because life isn't presented in that kind of a distributed fashion. Life is presented continuously, and you go from learning one thing to the next, and you need to be able to neuromodulate which neurons actually learn at any given point in time so that your learning only affects the contextual part of the representation space. And so I think that it's important to solve catastrophic forgetting to be able to move beyond these IID data sets into just a continuous stream of video.
Catastrophic forgetting would be absolutely critical there.
Yeah.
The idea of segregating different sets of neurons, whether we want the biological correlate of neural spindles in the brain or some kind of machine correlate in terms of hierarchical levels of organization inside of machine-trained neural nets. If we can solve catastrophic forgetting, it feels like a very clear path towards the, in some sense, holy grail of continuous learning systems moving towards general intelligence.
Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of progress on catastrophic forgetting. Some of the work from Jeff Clune in the last few years on animal and other projects have made tremendous improvements. And I think that attention-based mechanisms provide probably the best stepping stone to see further improvements on catastrophic forgetting and neuromodulated neural networks, so that the neural network is only updating part of itself contextually based on what it determines it's experiencing, or it's based on that. Yeah, so the back propagation. And I'm also very interested in biologically plausible alternatives to back propagation, because back propagation is not what the brain is doing clearly. It's not passing gradients and derivatives across the whole network. And so I think I'm just interested in biologically plausible mechanisms for for learning distributed representations. And I think that we will also see more generalization to out of distribution data as we approach these more modular mechanisms of learning, because I think our current system uses the entire parameter set and optimizes that in a way that it really becomes stuck with the local optima of the training dataset distribution. And so it's able to generalize within that dataset distribution, but it's not able to really generalize outside of the dataset distribution that it's experienced. And that's kind of a side effect of the fact that it uses its entire parameter set and optimizes all of that. And so I think understanding the deceptiveness of loss functions would make you want to, avoid optimizing your entire parameter set for a particular loss function. So you want to kind of explore, and then you can switch between different modalities of thought depending on which new type of experience the neural network is trying to process. So
the idea of multimodal inputs to learning systems seems so critical.
Absolutely.
Towards moving towards more generalized forms of intelligence. I feel like there's really an open question of how good, for example, a transformer-based language model can get if all it's doing is reading conversations that other conscious agents have had with each other. If we introduce a simple but continuously learning intelligence into a medium where it has the potential to interact with ultimately human beings as the highest form of intelligence we've currently manifested on this planet, it feels like, and if we enable that learning system to incorporate information from a number of different modalities in adversarial, in mutually beneficial, and all kinds of different game theoretic contexts, again, it feels like that will be a strong step in the direction of a general intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we need grounded learning. So, language learning right now is completely ungrounded. Um, it's basically what, some alien civilization that only had books would conjecture based on their assimilation of these strings of discrete symbols into some kind of patterns, but that doesn't really give you the context that comes with being an agent in an environment that associates other distributed representations with each of these words that also, correlates with that same distributed representation's discrete symbol. And so it's the pattern matching between those two modalities of sense. The neural networks encoding, in language, obviously is linked to the neural networks encoding in, the visual cortex and other cortex. And so, I think multimodal learning will enable grounded learning, as long as it's also active learning where the agent can interact and causally influence the environment. So I think we need I think not just co-occurrence observation, but we need to have that intervention observation. We need, like, Pearl's do calculus here. The p of y given x is not the same as the p of y if you do x, and so I think to accelerate learning and to reach AGI, we're going to need really good causal inference systems that are able to make interventions in the world and explore the causality and infer that. It's probably going to be building like a sparse factor graph, and so I'm excited for basically all of the frontiers of machine learning. I'm very excited for neural networks that are Turing complete, like the DNC, the differentiable neural computer by Graves. I think Alex Graves was the author on that paper. That was a few years ago, but in general, just this idea of augmenting these distributed representations with discrete memory that allow them to precisely recall data structures. I think that's powerful because that obviously opens the door to much better information processing systems than the human mind, which has no discrete memory. We call discrete systems, but we do so using a distributed representation, which is suboptimal. And then I'm just interested in everything else that's right now at the cutting edge of machine learning. Obviously, the last few years, transformers, reformers, attention mechanisms have been very impactful. And I think we're seeing progress with linear instead of quadratic complexity scaling for attention mechanisms. So that's exciting and opens the door to much larger context windows that can be brought in through these attention mechanisms. And yeah, so everything else that falls under machine learning, I think that's where I've spent my time recently, and that's what's kind of fun because we're entering this new epoch of human history where we're in uncharted waters and we're seeing exponential acceleration of many trends that will enable us to reach AGI within the next 10 to 20 years probably. And that's just...
I love that you're putting a date on this.
Yeah,
Brave man.
It's conjecture, right? But I'd rather have some kind of a tentative date to work with than none at all. And I think that's probably a fair time window. I think it could happen sooner. It could take longer. But the trends are astounding, right? If you look at the OpenAI has published a lot of research showing the trends, both in compute and also in efficiency and in parameter count. And on all counts, these trends are doubling every few months, or at least every year. And that leads to incredibly exponential growth. So yeah, it's phenomenal.
I can't wait to do perhaps even a specific episode unpacking the significance of deep fold, where we can start to see machine learning deliver tremendous, unprecedented, I might almost even say inconceivable value in other scientific domains. Once we have the ability to do work in synthetic biology that at the velocity at which we're currently pushing frontiers in computer science and deep learning, it's going to feel year over year like humanity's technological frontiers and opportunity horizons are advancing just exponentially in every direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So other interests include education, effective altruism, starting a new country, codifying business models, entrepreneurship, lifestyle design, travel, science, philosophy. All of these things are things that I kind of spend my time doing. I'm very autodidactic, I guess an automath. I spend a lot of time obsessing over learning, and sometimes I'll just get on a binge and learn some weird topic for a week or two on a
New tagline for the show: everything is sacred, nothing is off limits.
Yeah. So, in education, I think that's an area where we both share quite a bit of interests. You've obviously been a Unity education, you've been a Unity game developer, and so gamification of education is something you've thought about a lot and worked on. I'm very interested in that because I have young kids that I'm trying to accelerate in their precocious, development of world models while they're still in this stage.
Do you want to introduce our third host on the show here before he kicks you in the head?
Yeah, this is Andy, and he's...
Hey, Andy.
Oh, he can't hear because I have the earpods in, but...
Right.
You could say hi.
How's it going? You're on the air. Welcome to the... Oh, no. Okay, off the air.
Yeah, so he's been over there practicing his calculus while we've been chatting.
I can get 20 on
That's
basic
awesome.
integrals on Appy.
Nice. Good job.
Yeah, so he's just starting to learn integration by substitution, and he's been doing derivatives of polynomials and chain rule and derivatives of composite functions and rational functions. And so yesterday he was...
And how old is Andy?
6.
And I'm 6.
Yeah.
This is the future we're moving towards.
Yeah. And I think it's exceptionally important if you recognize the acceleration of AGI, that if we have kids, we want them to be able to survive and thrive in the world that they're going to grow up in, which is not this world. And that's important to distinguish between. It's a different world that they're going to inherit than the one we inherited. So
It's scary.
I think humanity is always going to face normalcy bias. And it's important to actually think about the future that they're going to live in and not just go with the gut feeling that it'll be like this world, because it's going to be very different. So I think...
that's an interesting open question. If the natural psychological tendency of a 21st century human is normalcy bias, then how do we compensate for that? Does some small selection of humanity have to sound like breathless, optimistic futurists in order to attempt to move the average closer to our actual civilizational trajectory? And if so, how do we not lose each other along the course of that journey?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see a large part of the world's population marginalized by capitalism as we see ever advancing a specialization in capitalism, and that becomes augmented by technology. So even before the advent of AGI, we're going to see an accelerating marginalization of the undereducated, and what's considered sufficient education today will not be considered sufficient in 20 years. And so, I think it's important to, for parents today to think about how they can leverage and take advantage of the current neuroplasticity of their young young kids to maximize their intuitive grasp of topics that will help them in the years to come. So
That's such a great point. We're already aware of how easily it is for children to acquire multiple human languages at a young age.
yeah,
And we should be leveraging this uniquely flexible state of our brains to ingest as much of the information that's going to be critical to survival in the years and decades ahead as humanly possible, one might say.
absolutely. And I'm a big fan of gamifying that learning because kids love to explore, right? There's this whole explore, exploit hyperparameter of the brain that seems to move from pure exploitation or a pure exploration in childhood to pure exploitation by the end of life, late adulthood. And so I think we can create exploration-based learning games that allow children to really pick up topics that would otherwise be considered abstruse and recondite in their young years. Things that are difficult to learn, in college can be learned with ease as a child if you just change the format of the presentation from exploitation to exploration. So if you just make these topics more interactive and less about finding the right answer and more about figuring out how they work, kids just naturally gravitate towards playing with those things and learning them. Specifically, math and physics is what I'm trying to do that with right now.
Physics?
So, yeah.
It's so interesting how the 2020 pandemic has profoundly transformed education already, and that process is, of course, just getting started. But it's also been huge for the entertainment gaming industry. And there's a few small starts in the direction of this exploration of what I see as the tremendously valuable frontier of kinesthetic gamified learning environments. And I don't really feel like the games industry has even begun to explore the potentials of that new space.
Right. Yeah, and we talked about like ideas, for example, Beat Saber as a learning environment would be fantastic. I think
the best kind of time pressure stress.
yeah. Yeah, so I'm super excited to eventually develop a lot of educational games. I'm considering right now developing a whole educational platform that would directly compete with like Khan Academy as a free, full curricular system. And I'm just excited to build out educational systems that my kids will find accelerate their learning.
The best kind of dog fooding.
Yeah, absolutely. So other
If your
than that,
6-year-old's learning differential calculus, you know you're doing something right.
Differential.
Absolutely.
Differential of special functions.
yeah, that's what he's working on right now. So he's taking derivatives of trigonomic functions where he has to substitute
Easy.
with u. So he's learning how to do that right now.
Awesome. Well, we just covered a lot of ground for a first episode.
Yeah.
I feel like this would be a great place to end on a high note. Is there anything else you want to add, Zach?
No, just that I think a lot of times we have this normalcy bias also keeps us from seeing the global optima that's possible. And so if we kind of step out of that and, go to first principles of what's possible with physics, then we can imagine a much cooler world. And you did it. Good job. Yeah, so I think that's kind of the shared emphasis here on kind of thinking laterally and thinking about things in terms of what's possible, what's the theoretically global optima, and it's usually not what we experience, and a lot of times that normalcy bias conflates those things and makes us think that the local optima is the global optima, and we need to guard against that. And there's so many areas of society that stagnate. One in particular that I think has been extremely calcified is the government, which runs on a runs on a few hundred-year-old operating system in our case, and I think that there's a lot of exciting potential to reinvent that as a codified structure from the ground up and make that an open source, multiplayer, emergent system that is far more efficient. And so that's another fun topic that we can explore on a future episode.
Yes, indeed. Essentially incorporating decentralized blockchain cryptographic techniques into societal economic incentivization and governance models. Yeah. I feel like Ethereum especially is just beginning to explore that space. And yet, of course, we're so early into the Gartner hype cycle of these technologies that crypto speculation has started to run its course, and yet the actual landslide changes in every layer of society as we begin to adopt decentralized architectures for corporate governance, for voting systems, for perhaps money itself, are going to be so exciting to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. My son is showing his progress on derivatives, integrals, equations, fractions, variables.
Right on.
I'm a scientist now.
Yes,
and
you are.
I have 764,
7,600 points on there. Cool.
Well, this is perfect. I'm going to wrap things up here.
Yep.
Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Be sure to like and follow wherever you get your pods.
Okay.